Okay.
So that, great.
Okay. So I see people coming in.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad Luke trusts us to do this on our own.
I know. God bless him from jumping on from Pittsburgh here.
Exactly. Exactly. They're coming in.
See what happens.
Our numbers are going up.
Yep.
This is a month where we had more people register. So that's really exciting.
It is very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I see 7. Give it a couple more minutes.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, they're still coming in, Sarah.
Okay.
Okay. I think it has slowed down a little bit.
Okay.
So let's begin. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to January 2022, kickoff of our parent lunchtime, parent partnership lunchtime series. That's a lot to say, Sarah.
We're practicing our P's. We have a lot of alliteration in our.
Oh, that's true. That's good. That's good. It's not very often. It's kind of neat. Just Sarah and I see each other, but being panelists, but it's always nice when I can see the audience. So
Right.
sometimes it's hard for me that I can't see faces, but
Right.
I guess I have
Right.
to get used to that kind of thing. So welcome everyone. Sarah and I would like, we've been working on a PowerPoint to guide our conversation today because we're getting a lot of what really is Orton Gillingham. What is dyslexia and what really is Orton Gillingham? So not sure your knowledge base, those of you that have joined us, but we want to share a little bit of what we know about what Orton Gillingham really is. Sarah, I think we should kick off with, I always like to kick off with something funny. We should say some of the comments that we've gotten when we've asked kids in our school.
Definitely.
Yeah, what's something? So when you said, what is Orton Gillingham? What has
So I asked if I got a few of the similar answers as far as with older kids, it was original gangster. But
yeah,
when
where's
I
that
asked,
coming from? Must be a game or something.
I don't know, but one of
Gangster.
my favorite responses was I asked a kindergartner, so when you hear OG, what do you think? What does it make you think about? And they said, well, og. And I was
They
like,
did the sounds. They were
they gave me
phonetic.
the OG sounds. And then another one backed up and said, no, that's what we do when we use our sand trays and our letter tiles. So
Yeah.
I thought that was my favorite one.
That's good. That someone was
You had
getting,
some
they
good
were on board a little bit more
Yes.
than original gangster. I got that too, that it's a test. Poor kids, it's a test.
Okay.
Everything's a test. But no, and then the other one said it's what teachers always say. So thinking that it's our language.
Right.
And but yeah, those are just a couple answers I got too, but they were funny. And some
Yes.
of them, that's been receiving that Orton Gillingham instruction for a couple years. One of my older students, when I just said to her the other day, "What is it?" and she just said, "I don't know." And I thought, shame on me because I've not told her. So
Right. Right.
apparently, thinking that I did, but apparently I haven't taught what
Yeah,
it is. So that woke me up to say, we need to bring awareness to what that is.
absolutely. I actually had that
Yeah,
conversation with a parent yesterday morning. Um, just about
yeah,
using the language that we use with each other, or maybe at home with our spouses in front of the kids, but we don't really explain what that is, and they're the ones going through it. So she did have a
yeah.
conversation with her child about what is multisensory and what is OG, and what is Wilson, and so they did have a conversation about that. And I just want to remind everyone to please chat. Use the chat if you want to add to our conversation. You have any questions, comments, share your own experiences.
Absolutely. At any time. We don't have to
Yep.
save that for the end. Absolutely. We love your comments. Okay, well, let me share my screen with a little slideshow that Sarah and I have created. And what we were, talking about is being that we're starting off the new year. Just in the past, we have brought in speakers, and those sessions are on both of our websites. So we'll talk a little bit about each of our learning centers, and where we're located, and what you can how you can get a hold of us or refer us to people that have children that might be struggling in reading or math. So but yeah, so please refer to those. So this year we want to start out with who we are for new viewers, because we're trying to expand that throughout our communities in West Virginia and Pennsylvania. I am Theresa Kowcheck, the director of the Center for Multisensory Learning at Wheeling Country Day School. So I've been the director for 10 years, and it's been a wonderful journey. And we continue to expand and get better in our skills and get better in awareness of who we are and what we do. We work on that daily. I also am a reading instructor at Carlow University. So part of the team there where we teach teachers the science of reading. Wonderful experience, wonderful, amazing university, and proud to be part of that. And recently just became a fellow in training through the Academy of Wharton Gillingham. And so we have a lot of work to do. Sarah and I were just talking about it this week. We have a lot of work to do because we are expanding who we are and what we want to do for teachers to help our struggling readers. So visit us on our website, and we will provide those for you in our chat box by the end. But that's a little bit about the CML. The kids will go around. We have OG and we have the CML. So now when you hear CML, it's the Center for Multisensory Learning. So we have a lot of initials. But yeah, let me go to the next slide. And Sarah, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so I'm Sarah Sora. I'm the director of the Dyslexia Center and Learning Lab here at the Campus Laboratory School on Carlow University's campus. This is our second year of the center, having the center here at the campus school. It has been a dream of mine for 17, 18 years now to have a center for dyslexia awareness, to give parents and teachers the knowledge about what is dyslexia, how do we help learners who have dyslexia and other learning disabilities. So it's so thrilling to be here. I've been at Carlow for 22 years. I started as a kindergarten teacher here and then watched a woman who would take kids out of the classroom and work with them on a special program for kids with dyslexia. So I am certified in the Wilson reading system, which is we'll get into this a little bit later, but it's a kind of an offshoot from Wharton Gillingham. It follows the same principles and strategies. It's just the scope and sequence is a little bit different. I also am an instructor at the Carlow University, working with pre-service teachers, as well as a part of the apprenticeship program. So teaching and working with childcare providers who have been in the field for a very long time and want to go back and get and further their education. So Carlow is doing some absolutely amazing things at the university. They have a dyslexia track certificate that parents can get just to help you understand what actually goes into your child's education and learning if they do have that diagnosis of dyslexia. So our teachers here at Carlow, and we worked really hard to do this, to get them also trained in structured literacy program to follow the science of reading. Our teachers, as well as Theresa's, because we partnered with them to get our letters training. And in the classrooms, we use Foundations as our phonics approach. We use Haggerty as our phonemic awareness approach. And then we're really working with our kiddos and our teachers on adaptive and assistive technology. So that's a little bit about the Campus Lab School. Our partnership with the university is really what creates that lab school environment here. And our kids I walked into a kindergarten classroom yesterday with 12 students, and they counted them all, and then they went on with their phonemic awareness instruction. So it's really a fun thing to be part of.
Well, and Sarah, that's going to be up and coming in the next possibly March, right? That
Right.
We're going to feature what's going on in our early childhood, because that's where we need to see it happen.
Right.
Where this Orton Gillingham comes in both of our schools. So our plan is to be live in a couple of months, visiting each other's preschools and kindergartens to show you what we really do and how we incorporate it into our schools. And I just have to say thank goodness Sarah and I have come together because of our leadership, because of Dr. Keely Baronic from Carlow University and Liz Hoffreiter, our head of school at Wheeling Country Day. The two masterminds there of building a community to help to help our struggling readers. Those two brought Sarah and I together. So they created something, because Sarah and I we're kind of alike in a lot of areas.
Soul sisters.
Yeah, right. Well, we share the same compassion. We definitely do. And we each have a team of people at each of our institutions where they're even more passionate, let's say. So we're very blessed, and we talk about that all the time. So that's who we are, right, Sarah? Did we leave anything out? I think that was a nice little introduction to our audience.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So make sure I can. Okay. So, here we are, learning differences. And what is it? And what is dyslexia? And the first thing, that we like to say is, dyslexia, dys meaning difficulty, and lexia, words, difficulty with words. And that's a little bit of how we want to tell you today, talk a little bit about what it is, a little bit about how the brain works, and why these kids with average to high, high intelligence still struggle with words.
Right.
And some of the other learning differences, right, Sarah, go along with that dyslexia.
Yes, these are some of the learning differences we see in our learning centers. And, sometimes it is a co-diagnosis with dyslexia, and sometimes, maybe it is just ADHD. But I think the important part is to recognize that our kids are, struggle with a variety of learning differences. And we have to, as teachers and educators, be equipped to really work with them and help them be successful in the classroom. And I think that, when you follow that universal design of teaching in your schools, that you really hit on all of these areas that are listed here. But
Absolutely.
as we'll see in the slides that come up,
Mhm.
dyslexia is it hits a lot of different pieces of that learning process,
Right.
with executive functioning being a really big piece. And
Yeah,
part of,
because like you and I were talking, Sarah, which is how we came up with this slide, you can look at the learning difference. We don't like to say learning disability because it doesn't mean the inability to learn. It just, we preface learning differently. And that's what everything that falls under learning differences. Um, a lot of these being diagnosed with dyslexia, like your dysgraphia, which is the difficulty with writing, with handwriting, with getting that written expression, what's in here to the paper.
right.
The dyscalculia, math, difficulty with math, that
Mhm.
number sense,
Mhm.
and how ADHD, and we see clinical evaluations all the time, and how ADHD is usually right there with the
Right.
dyslexia because it's
Right.
that attention and that focus.
Mhm.
And and you got to throw in there the anxiety as well.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
See, we think alike.
We do.
Um, executive function. I love the executive function piece because that ties into all of this.
It does.
A child with from organization to goal setting to cognitive flexibility. These are the executive skills, and we have a wonderful um, uh, webinar that we did. Oh, heck, I think it was back in February with Dr. Peg Dawson.
Right.
And let me just give a little shout out to the Smart But Scattered, her book that has been helpful to parents and teachers.
Yeah,
But,
that two-part series is on our websites,
yeah,
that you can access.
yeah, we were blessed to have her 2 times. Like you said, she's talked to our teachers and our parents, but she talks about how those skills, they need to be taught. Like, we can't assume that a child with so many layers of, you know no, not having the attention or the capability of staying organized. We have to teach these skills.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
she teaches us a lot. And you open that book and you start to read it, and as a parent you see things yourself of
Mhm.
where your executive skills need to improve.
Right. And I
um,
think, the other part is both of our schools use the SMARTS program, which is an executive functioning
yes.
program where all kids need that explicit instruction, some more than others, but it doesn't hurt to give that instruction to all the kids in your classroom.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I,
You're
I believe
exactly right. And you said the key, the explicit, and that word's going to come up again.
over and
The
over.
explicit. We're leading our way to that Orton Gillingham, but that explicit instruction is key. And then, finally, with the nonverbal learning disability and the visual auditory processing, definitely that nonverbal of just, social cues, the having a hard time with the pragmatics of language, being able to read facial expressions and not understanding the language,
Mhm.
whether it's written on a page or whether it's just, on the face, whatever.
Right.
Not talking close up into somebody's face, just the pragmatics
Mhm.
of language. Um, and so, okay, so a lot of these we included understood.org, a wonderful a website. It's a go-to for both Sarah and I.
Yes,
I'm on it daily,
thank you.
just to, when someone says a new term or I need to learn a little bit more about one of these differences, that's where we go. So we highly recommend the
And I
understood.
think the other great thing about Understood is that it gives you graphic organizers to work on that go along with each of these learning differences that are listed here. It's a fantastic resource.
It is definitely. Okay. Oh, here's that slide.
Right. So we thought about, really giving all you guys, but all of us this visual of like, okay, so we know someone has dyslexia. What does that mean? And not just the definition, but what does that mean for their learning process and their living process? Right. And all of these areas, we thought this was a great slide to just show you how many areas are actually affected. So yes, it is a language, a language processing problem, but it also encompasses all of these other areas are affected.
Yeah. And so with that list of learning differences, this kind of defines it a little bit more. So when Sarah and I were talking about this slide, all we thought of was executive function. That piece where we might say organization. Yeah, can I organize my desk? Can I organize my book bag? Do we need to teach that skill? But when you look at just the writing, looking at the orange section here, not being able to the writing process, we can teach it, but for our dyslexic, we need to teach it a little differently. Bringing in the graphic organizers, teaching it maybe over and over and over, and really scaling that down. And I know we do it in both of our schools for kids that may have problems with writing. How
Right.
can we teach it differently?
Right. And how can we give them the resources they need? For instance, when you can't find, word retrieval and finding that right word is sometimes difficult. So we can give them a list of words, or you can use an assistive technology that kind of anticipates what that word might be. So
Yes.
just the knowledge that all of this is happening, right, empowers the teacher and the parent to say, okay, wait a minute, I need to help them find that word, or I need to help them with the date, how to remember dates,
Yeah.
or whatever area that you see here, you might be thinking about at the time, depending on the assignment. I think this just gives a real visual to help us help them.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a great visual. And I love this, but think about this, because these are the layers and layers and layers that our struggling learners have to deal with daily, so how can we help? We're leading there. Okay. Sarah, anything else on this? I can go to the next slide,
No, I
correct?
think we're ready for the next one. Yeah.
Okay. So let's do a little bit of dyslexia awareness. We both talked to we talked to teachers, we talked to parent groups, we talked to kids. I had a great conversation yesterday about what dyslexia is to a little one, what it really is. So if we may share this little, let me bring this up. I will work hard to skip there we go.
Take a moment to read the following. How was that? Frustrating? Slow? What were those sentences about? They're actually a simulation of the experience of dyslexia, designed to make you decode each word. Those with dyslexia experience that laborious pace every time they read. When most people think of dyslexia, they think of seeing letters and words backwards, like seeing B as D and vice versa. Or they might think people with dyslexia see saw as was. The truth is, people with dyslexia see things the same way as everyone else. Dyslexia is caused by a phonological processing problem, meaning people affected by it have trouble not with seeing language, but with manipulating it. For example, if you heard the word cat and then someone asked you, remove the C, what word would you have left? At. This can be difficult for those with dyslexia. Given a word in isolation like fantastic, students with dyslexia need to break the word into parts to read it. Fan, tas, tick. Time spent decoding makes it hard to keep up with peers and gain sufficient comprehension. Spelling words phonetically, like STIK for stick and FRENS for friends, is also common. These difficulties are more widespread and varied than commonly imagined. Dyslexia affects up to 1 in 5 people. It occurs on a continuum. One person might have mild dyslexia, while the next person has a profound case of it. Dyslexia also runs in families. It's common to see one family member who has trouble spelling, while another family member has severe difficulty decoding even one-syllable words like catch. The continuum and distribution of dyslexia suggest a broader principle to bear in mind as we look at how the brains of those with dyslexia process language. Neurodiversity is the idea that because all our brains show differences in structure and function, we shouldn't be so quick to label every deviation from the norm as a pathological disorder, or dismiss people living with these variations as defective. People with neurobiological variations like dyslexia, including such creative and inventive individuals as Picasso, Muhammad Ali, Whoopi Goldberg, Steven Spielberg, and Cher, clearly have every capacity to be brilliant and successful in life. So here's the special way the brains of those with dyslexia work. The brain is divided into 2 hemispheres. The left hemisphere is generally in charge of language and ultimately reading, while the right typically handles spatial activities. fMRI studies have found that the brains of those with dyslexia rely more on the right hemisphere and frontal lobe than the brains of those without it. This means when they read a word, it takes a longer trip through their brain and can get delayed in the frontal lobe. Because of this neurobiological glitch, they read with more difficulty. But those with dyslexia can physically change their brain and improve their reading. With an intensive multisensory intervention that breaks the language down and teaches the reader to decode based on syllable types and spelling rules, the brains of those with dyslexia begin using the left hemisphere more efficiently while reading, and their reading improves. The intervention works because it locates dyslexia appropriately as a functional variation in the brain, which naturally shows all sorts of variations from one person to another. Neurodiversity emphasizes this spectrum of brain function in all humans and suggests that to better understand the perspectives of those around us, we should try to not only see the world through their eyes, but understand it through their brains.
Okay. Love that.
There's so much in that video that
Yeah, there's a lot in that video.
I'd love to, yeah.
And so I'm glad that you're just thinking of the brain and explaining to a child that is dyslexic that because we always read and hear about how kids think that they're not smart, but it's just a difference. They're just learning differently.
Right.
And teaching, I mean, we do great deep dives here at Wheeling Country Day, and we did a great deep dive with the 4th grade last year on the brain, and they really appreciated understanding how all of our brains are different.
Yeah.
And those that have difficulty with reading, it's just all about the connections in the lobe.
Right.
But
We're getting some comments in the chat,
Oh,
Theresa,
good.
that people love the video and that it was
Okay.
an eye opener and gives such a better understanding.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Let's explain it a little further.
Okay.
There's so many myths, and I love that with the was in the saw, it's not like you just read backwards, and that's what everybody thinks, but
Right.
there's a lot of things that we can still learn. Here's another eye opener for those that like that. So,
Yeah.
you saw those pictures of the brain, and it was all about, if you really look at the orange area, we're going to compare here the non-dyslexic brain to the dyslexic brain. And so it kept lighting up the fMRI that they referred to. It just talks about the frontal lobe there, left hemisphere. And look at how much larger it is on the dyslexic brain. That's the hub. That's where all the work is taking place. That's where the neurons are firing, and but they're not firing in the other lobes, which you can
Right.
see, the occipital lobe and the parietal temporal lobe, where they need to be firing up for reading, for skilled reading to take place. So this is where a dyslexic child's like, I'm not smart, I'm stupid. Why don't I learn like everybody else? And Sarah, you and I both know these are things we hear
Right.
all the time,
Right.
all the time. But I want to share with you an understanding, because I'm not a brain scientist. I don't study the brain nor claim to know a lot about that, the science of it. But when it comes to my greatest understanding that I ever received was from Dr. Carol Tolman, one of the leading educators, throughout the world. So with her, I've learned so much on understanding the dyslexic brain. So if I can just share like a little activity with you, that if you just, got your thumb, do it with me, Sarah. Let's do the, we're going to make a little brain here. And I have a marker, had a black marker. I'll use my orange one. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm going to pretend this is a brain, right? So I'm going to talk about the occipital lobe right here, which is down here kind of below. So this is activated when reading printed words. So what this is where we process the letters and letter patterns of language. It's not natural for us to be able to recognize a C or a B or a D. This is where we have the neurons that make memory traces to see something is, if it's curved or straight or diagonal. So we have to directly, strong word, directly teach, the directionality of these, B's and D's. Super confusing, am I right? So this occipital lobe here is where we see letters, also known as graphemes. So that's that area right there. Up here in the frontal lobe, the big orange area where they are referring to on this screen. So this is where pronunciation and articulation is happening. Think back to the video when they said, say cat, and I'll say it without saying k, and it's at. So that's like the manipulating of sound. So beginner readers have to travel to this area of the brain where we have memory traces of phonemes or speech sounds. So this is the frontal lobe. All right. So for the phonemes being the smallest unit of sounds. So as I point to the occipital and the frontal, right? So the symbol and the sound, there's a large area. They're far away from one another. Look at that brain picture. They're far away. So something else needs to happen. So we have to bridge them. So we have to bridge the phoneme grapheme association, and it's right up here, and that's called the angular gyrus. So this part of the brain is going to bridge that grapheme phoneme correspondence. So we're leading up to our instruction, right? We have to directly teach a grapheme, a letter, how to write a B, and then attach a sound to it. So it's that sound symbol correspondence that we teach one sound at a time to that dyslexic brain, because as you look at the dyslexic brain, there's no neural pathway. So we have to build that, we have to construct that. This is why teachers need to know how to construct that. How do we build these pathways? It's doing it, teaching over and over. It's teaching it multisensory, visually. Because up here at the angular gyrus, Sarah, that's the tactile kinesthetic piece. So that's where we got to bring this in, using the VAC, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. It's all working together. And one of my favorite, Steven Pinker, a leading scientist researcher. I love what he says. He says children are wired for sound, but print is an optional accessory that must be painstakingly bolted on.
Mhm.
Marianne Wolf refers.
I was just going to say Marianne Wolf too.
Yeah, Browse and the Squid, one of our favorite authors. But he says it has to be painstakingly bolted on. Something we see, it's not going to happen overnight. It's, we have to build it. We have to build it, and it will eventually happen. And it may be over and over and over, but we have to build that pathway for this phonic bridge. So this was because of Dr. Carol Tolman, and it just learning from her through letters, the professional development for teachers. I learned so much on how we have to bolt it on for our dyslexic.
Right. And I think even going back to that video where he talks about that physically changing the brain, right?
Yes.
And that's what we're doing. That's what we're talking about here. Physically changing the dyslexic brain so that those two other areas start to light up.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And they have to. Yeah. And we have to do that, but we have to do that explicitly and systematically. And the next one, multisensory. Right, Sarah?
That's right.
So that there, go ahead.
Right. I was just going to say that multisensory piece continuously, repetitively, explicitly is what just continues to strengthen that bridge.
Yeah, it does. And look, it says it right there, to match the phoneme and the grapheme, the sound and the letter. And how do we do it? Through the sand, the rice, writing on the carpet.
Whipped cream.
That gets fun.
Right.
But we have to connect it to that that tactile, that it's all multimodal. I love that word, multimodal.
I do too. And I think too, like when we are able to go into our classrooms and show you, I was just in there again with teachers yesterday, and the kids, they were told the students that I had in there, we have to say the letter's name also as we write it. So they make the sound k, at, cat, C-A-T. So they're reminding themselves of the sound of the letter's name. They're feeling it. They're doing it. They're blending it.
Yeah. And we're giving it away. This is Orton Gillingham, everyone. This is Orton Gillingham. This is the approach that we're gonna talk about. But you're right, Sarah. I love that you said that. What is it? The frontal lobe, the articulation and pronunciation. So at, and then connecting it to the C-A-T. So they have to be bridged together in order to improve decoding, sounding out words, and encoding, spelling words. A lot of people say, well, spelling's not important. We have spell check. That's great. That's fantastic. And that becomes helpful, but we still have to directly teach that spelling because it's creating a pathway in the brain.
Right. It's almost like creating a map too, right? Like they're mapping that in their brain.
And what's it called? You just said it. Orthographic mapping by David Kilpatrick, who has given us this term, orthographic mapping. Mapping the sounds to the letters.
And I think too, I remember learning this too when I was going through my training, that tactile, kinesthetic piece to the multisensory learning is really it's helping those neurons continue to fire also. Absolutely. Just that touch, that's what the touch does. And it gives the neurons kind of the ability to keep grasping onto things.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great. So this one is, we learn differently, we teach differently. And this is why, we at both of our schools and our learning centers, we know we have to teach differently. if we can share with you it's just a short 2-minute clip of Margie Gillis. And Margie Gillis is, again, understood.org. She is a leading expert, and another website for you all to walk away with is Literacy How, another go-to. She is the founder of Literacy How. And so she brings us a lot. So if you could just listen to her as we go into the second part of this.
We've learned so much about what dyslexia is and isn't. We know it's a brain-based condition that impacts reading, spelling, and writing, but it's not a problem with vision. Dyslexia is a problem with understanding and working with language. Dyslexia is a lifelong issue that tends to run in families, so there's often a parent or a sibling who also has it. And brain imaging studies have shown us that there are differences in how the brain is structured and how it functions in people who have dyslexia. But it's important to know that dyslexia has nothing to do with intelligence. Children with dyslexia are just as smart as other children. We can see signs of dyslexia even before children learn to read. Reading is a complicated process that starts with being able to recognize individual sounds in words. Take the word elephant. Most children at a young age can recognize 3 parts in that word, elephant. But the child with dyslexia might not hear that "fint" is actually made up of 4 different sounds. I, n, t. They may only hear 1 or 2. Reading and spelling are hard for kids with dyslexia because first they have to hear those individual sounds, and then they have to understand that each of those sounds is represented by 1 or more letters. Children with dyslexia usually have difficulty with this basic language skill, which is called phonemic awareness. So you might see your child having trouble with rhyming or isolating the sounds in words. That makes it difficult for your child to match letters to their sounds, like knowing that S sounds like S or that SH sounds like sh. This skill is called decoding, and children use it to sound out words. We know a lot about what can help children with these skills. The most important thing is specialized reading instruction. A well-known approach is called Orton-Gillingham. It helps children to learn to break words down into their component sounds, match the sounds to letters, and then blend those sounds together. Reading programs based on Orton-Gillingham use multisensory techniques. So children might trace letters in sand while saying that letter and its sound, or clap out syllables in words. These methods are proven to be effective. There are also tools like audiobooks, text-to-speech software, and reading apps that can help children with dyslexia. You can help your child at home by reading aloud together every day. Choosing books that tap into your child's passions can help develop an interest in reading. Playing rhyming games, reading nursery rhymes, and singing songs can also be a fun way to help younger children build early reading skills. It's important to know that even though children don't outgrow dyslexia, they can become skilled readers and strong learners. With the right support, they can succeed in school and in life.
Love that video too.
Yeah, that's a fantastic video.
And I think what she said about, really that's our goal, right? Is wanting and helping our children succeed in school and life.
Mhm.
And having this knowledge base, I think is really what's going to get them
What we
there.
know as ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or some people still call it ADD, attention deficit disorder, has been recognized by some doctors since way.
There you go.
Cut it off.
So she did at the end say, she brought up Orton-Gillingham, and we're going to get into that in a little more in depth. But see, these are some of the other program names that you may hear associated with your child's learning. So for instance, here at the campus school, we do Orton-Gillingham, we do Wilson, which is these all fall under the umbrella of Orton Gillingham multisensory based instruction. And just like she was talking about that specialized reading instruction, that's what these programs are. I would just put out there to make sure when you do hear about a program that your child, that a teacher or a school is using for your child, just, kind of give a check and make sure it's a research-based program, that's grounded in that science of reading. And again, using that multi-sensory instruction.
I apologize, Sarah. I moved the
No,
slide.
no, it's okay.
Too many. But it does lead into, as you were saying, Orton Gillingham. So the question right now is, who is Orton and who is Gillingham? So that's where it leads to the OG, who the original gangsters
They are the original
are.
gangster.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, but they connected. This is where they connected science, that's Orton, to the practice, that's Gillingham, to reading, and that's for teachers, to teach reading. Yeah, so move on to the next one. Okay, so who's Orton, Sarah?
Who is Orton? Samuel Orton was a neuropsychiatrist and pathologist who was also a pioneer in focusing attention on reading failure and related language processing difficulties. And I think the most important piece that we continue to work on too is bringing together the neuroscientific information and the principles to remediation. And I just thought what was interesting about this was, to me, like thinking that, he started this in the 1920s and was working with kids who were having these language processing difficulties, recognizing that, and then teaming up with Gillingham to make sure that, he was using his expertise and matching it with her expertise to create these principles of learning for kiddos that were struggling with reading.
Yeah. Sarah, fun fact, guess where Dr. Samuel T. Orton was born?
I don't know.
Columbus, Ohio.
Oh my goodness, I did not know that.
Columbus, Ohio. Yes, yeah. And he went on to do such great work. And he had a mobile unit,
Right.
because he traveled around Des Moines, Iowa, where he had a mobile unit. And I guess it's when he was working with a 16-year-old boy that, they thought had a mental illness, that he had a learning disability. He was never going to learn. And they referred to him as MP. And so he worked with him and he said, he said the boy knew letter names, but had faulty sound association. So he could tell you the letter name,
right?
But he couldn't tell you the sound. So, but he knew it had nothing to do with intelligence. So he was that neuropsychiatrist. We needed the science piece. That's why he's the science, and he became the pioneer. Many more to follow after him, but he pioneered this and started out with stephosymbalia. That was a term for dyslexia that evolved into word blindness that became the word dyslexia. So he definitely was, and if you've heard of the International Dyslexia Association, which is, active today, and a great resource for teachers and parents, that was originally the Orton Society. Yeah, originally the Orton Society. So the Academy today known, the Academy of Orton Gillingham, affiliated with the Orton Society, which, broke off from that. But yeah, so that's where Orton comes in, right? The original.
Right. And the focus on those connections and memory building, it's just, we're still talking about that now, right? And we're building upon what he really brought to light about learning how to read.
We're still trying to bring awareness. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Well, Gillingham, so she's the educator. She's the practice piece. Okay. So she's the one that was lucky enough to team up with Orton, because she said, I'm going to put his principles into practice for the kids, for the teachers and the students. And then she brought along Bessie Stillman. Okay. And then together they started working on the additions. I brought it with me, but this is the Orton Gillingham manual, the final edition, the 5th edition, where they worked tirelessly on fine tuning it and practicing and putting it to practice, and contributed to all the works here. Stillman had passed away a long time before her, and she kept on with the work, and gave a lot of credit to Bessie Stillman. So yeah, this manual is definitely a reference that, for me and for people that practice Orton Gillingham. So she's huge in the Orton Gillingham to give us the reading. So she had said, and I just want to read this, it says, as surely as lives could be lost if a building were poorly constructed, the contribution of a mind could be lost if a child were unable to process his own language. So I thought that was really cool. I liked that that she felt that. So as we give you here our final couple slides, because our time is almost up.
It is.
It gets to the lesson. So, what really is Orton Gillingham? I think the question is, who is Orton Gillingham? And I think we answered that for you, the neuropsychiatrist and the educator. And together they came together to give us the lesson. So I think it's important to walk away knowing that Orton Gillingham, they gave us the approach. It's not a curriculum. You're not going to be able to look it up and order the curriculum. It's the approach. It's the technique. So they gave us the principles and of what to teach and how to teach it. Yeah, and those programs that you mentioned, Sarah, are wonderful programs today that broke off from that umbrella term of the Gillingham approach, the OG approach. Wilson, I know she was a pioneer as well in the Orton Society, but many other people, Slingerland, Sonday, these are just people that were able to work with, from the Orton Gillingham work, was able to learn from that and bring programs that could go into the schools. So it's a blessing. It's wonderful.
Right.
So we're able to have that. But so this approach, this is just, it just involves the 5 components of reading, which we're going to hit the phonology, the sound symbol correspondence, the orthography, the spelling piece of it. Yeah, the morphology, which that's more of the advanced teaching, and that's getting into meaning, word meaning, so prefixes and prefixes, suffixes, Latin roots, and understanding their meaning, and working with older kids on that. Well, not just older kids, but the kids understanding the meaningful parts of words. And then the syntax and semantics, which is the writing piece, word order, multiple meanings, and how do you do it, right, Sarah? We've been using the word directly and explicitly, systematically. We got to follow a certain, what sounds of it, what concepts of the English language are we going to teach, and what order are we going to teach them in? Cumulatively, it's going to what? Like the working memory, we're going to try to build.
You have to build upon.
Yeah. And then the multisensory, which I think we've done well at explaining that. But, like being a physician, we are. If, we're Orton Gillingham practitioners, structured literacy tutors, and instruction must be diagnostic and prescriptive.
Absolutely.
So diagnostic, right, Sarah, being that Orton, the brain part, being diagnostic. What's the problem? Sarah, go back to our big of dyslexia in the middle and all the stuff around it.
Right.
We as practitioners, we need to diagnose where's the deficit, right?
And then I think, yes, every lesson we need to diagnose, right? What's happening now? What are we struggling with this time? And you may go into, as a tutor or a teacher, you may go into a lesson thinking, I'm going to cover this. And as you're covering that, something else pops up, right? That's being able to look at it diagnostically and say, okay, now I'm going to focus on that piece.
Yeah, the diagnostic piece, the Gillingham piece. I love to say that the diagnostic Orton, the prescriptive is the Gillingham. So there's the exception. So we need the two in order to get to reading.
Right.
And so, my gosh, how thankful we are for the work that they've done. And I think that that's what you and I are trying to bring to the forefront is that we're thankful that we have this and that we're able to teach teachers that can teach children.
Right.
So I want to stop there because we could go on, but I want to see if there's any questions or comments. Is there anything in the chat box?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay.
As of now.
Okay. And if not, like I said, the original Orton Society, which is today the International Dyslexia Association, they have a wonderful resource handbook for families. So if you ever wanted to read more about dyslexia and about assessment, how do we diagnose? What are the what is the teaching approach? What are teachers going to do? How to find people? We've got, first of all, our centers that are here for you. And we like to say that we're here for you in person and we're here virtually. We can add that. We're doing a lot virtually with students now. So please reach out to either of us. And we really, really look forward to, let me stop share. And I think this has been a fantastic session. And
I do too. And and like Theresa said, reach out to us. In fact, should we put our emails in the?
You sure can. Let's do that. Yes, thank you. I'll put mine in the chat.
I know both of our centers have summer programming that are pretty intensive, summer learning and after school programming. So if you're interested and also more workshops and seminars, there's also an International Dyslexia Conference being held at Carlow University on April 9th.
Yeah.
That's, open to parents, teachers, educators, caregivers who want to know more. So,
and you and I'll both be there. We'll both be
we'll both
part of
be
that.
there. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So please come to that and join our sessions once a month. Sarah and I send out, the registration. We already have a couple months planned. But what you can do, I think our next one, we're going to talk to someone that has dyslexia and his journey.
Yes.
And then we want to, exactly. Ernie, and then see, what we can do. Let's learn from him.
Right.
And visit our schools. Let's get more authors and to come on and teach us more. And it'll be super exciting.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining us today.
Yes.
Stay warm.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great day. Have a great day.
Bye,
Sarah.
everybody. You
Thank
too,
you.
Theresa.
Bye-bye.